Welcome back. Welcome back. I feel as though I'm in front of my parole board, but hopefully they will be kind to me. I'm sorry for those of you who've got the hardback chairs, but you know, what can I say? We're here for the next hour to talk about the power of open innovation. Now that's a term of art which describes a very specific approach to creating new products, services, supply chains, delivery systems. And it basically says that in a world of widely distributed knowledge, a company or an organization cannot afford to really rely entirely on its own research, but instead has to go outside, has to buy or license processes or inventions, has to involve partners, has to find ways to bring crowds, in some cases, into the process. And this is a very different and challenging point of view, and we have to actually have at least one innovation expert here from the Holst Center in Eindhoven, our Intelligent Community of the Year, which is an open innovation center, and so we'll be hearing about that specific thing. But we're also going to explore this in a larger sense. The sense that innovation is a matter of ecosystems, that communities can boost their innovation rate, which is essential to being a competitive place, by finding ways to involve business, government, and citizens in the creation of the new. So we want to explore how to foster an open innovation environment in your community in which public sector, private sector, and or nonprofit organizations share knowledge, establish shared objectives, and collaborate effectively based on trust, which of course is a very rare and precious flower that needs to be taken care of. So I'd like to begin by just asking each of our panelists to do what they can do better than I, which is to introduce themselves briefly to you and tell you where they come from so that you'll understand their point of view as they speak. Why don't we start with you, Margot? Okay.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for having me. My name is Margot Nijkamp. I am currently the Director of SME Partnerships at Haas Center in Eindhoven, where we're very proud to be the smartest region until tomorrow. I was actually the first person to start at Holst Center as the HR director about 7 years ago, and we now have 240 international talents working on research together. We have amazing industry partnerships, so I'm excited to be here to share my vision on open innovation.
And next we have?
Okay, hello everyone. So my name is Jianxi. I'm a professor of innovation and entrepreneurship at NYU Poly, right here. Welcome. So here at the Poly, I teach innovation and entrepreneurship, general issues, all kinds of issues to undergrad, grad, and executive students. And my research focuses on the structure and the evolution of innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems.
Robert.
My name is Rob Praske. I'm the CEO of anyCOMM Corporation, located out in Northern California. I guess you'd classify me as a serial entrepreneur. My company, anyCOMM, is putting new technology in a light bulb, so we're making it smart. It's been a 13-year effort to get to this point. This is my 7th startup, so not easy, but very rewarding. That's me.
You know, it's never occurred to me that the whole light bulb over the head thing, smart, boy, marketing idea that I'm sure you've already had.
We'll talk.
Hi, I'm Katie Espeseth, and I'm here representing EPB of Chattanooga. That's the Electric Power Board of Chattanooga. We're a municipally owned utility owned by the city of Chattanooga. And while there's lots of examples we think of innovation in the city of Chattanooga, we'll probably spend most of our time today. We just recently completed building a 100% fiber optic network in our 600 square mile area and passing about 170,000 homes and businesses in our area, offering gigabit services to anyone who lives in our territory. So I'm excited to hear some other ideas about innovation and also speak to a few instances that we've been fortunate to experience over the last few years.
And Chattanooga was a top 7 intelligent community last year.
Yes, we were. Thank you.
And last, Dave.
Yeah, I'm Dave Carter from the City of Manchester in the UK. I run the Manchester Digital Development Agency, which focuses on 3 things: digital innovation, digital industries, and digital inclusion. But I'm also here representing Eurocities, which is the big European network of more than 140 cities across Europe, and we have a smart cities working group within Eurocities, which is partnered with the European network of living labs. So we're really focusing on user-driven open innovation with the emphasis on the word open.
And Manchester is also a former top 7 intelligent community.
It seems a long time ago.
Well,
I think it was 2007.
Oh, it's a century ago.
Yeah, but we have a very close working relationship between Eurocities and ICF. And somebody asked me, well, what's ICF? Why ICF and not other networks? And my view is it's a network with attitude, and we like that.
Well, you know, New Yorkers got a lot of that. Dave, why don't we start with you? What I'd like to have each of you do is give us just a brief example for your experience of a successful open or collaborative innovation. What does success look like when we get this difficult thing right?
I think for me, it's about the user-driven aspect of this. It's about involving people. There's quite a debate going on. There's not a consensus on this. There's a real debate between, if in the States you probably see Fast Company magazine. There was a fantastic article 18 months ago called The Battle for the Heart and Soul of Smart Cities. And it contrasted some technology push of smart city in a box. Here's your urban operating system. Unpack it, plug it in, you've got a smart city. Whereas we're much more interested in smart, rather urban open systems. You can't have a smart city without smart people. You can't have people engaged and involved unless they've got not just the skills, but also inspiration and aspiration to be connected. So we're part of that big debate going on at the moment. But if you look at some of the practical living labs projects, particularly in Europe, they're all over the world. Again, an American export, Bill Mitchell. People remember the late Professor Bill Mitchell from MIT. He came up with the term in the mid-90s. There's now more than 300 living labs around the world. And certainly in Europe, individual cities, Smart Santander in Spain has deployed 20,000 sensors. So does that make them a smart city? Well, no, but the engagement work they've done with 20,000 citizens in the last 2 years to get them involved in even deciding what kind of sensors, where they should go. Having programmable sensors, people building their own Arduino-based sensors, involving artists to interpret the data. We've heard a lot about the way that we can engage creative people with smart people who know the technology, and that's a really important thing. So I think success is where you've got this, as we've heard from some of the living labs here in North America, you've got a user base, you've got hundreds of volunteers who actually not just want to be involved, but are enthusiastic, who act as evangelists for this kind of approach. To me, that's the real litmus test.
Margot, is the Holst Center involved in the living lab movement? I just asked that in passing.
We are currently setting up a living lab in Eindhoven. It's called the Eindhoven Principle, so we're very proud to get that launched. So yes, indeed, living labs is a functionality that we are now adding to Eindhoven.
I should have thanked you, by the way, at the beginning of this panel, so I'll do it now, which is that we're able to have this discussion thanks to the sponsorship of your organization, so thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so out of the many, 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 many projects at the Holst Center, can you name one that stands out in your mind in terms of?
Well, I think the basic principle of the success at Holst Center is actually the way we use our IP model. Our intellectual property model means that we get direct competing companies to share the risk and share the results of research, and that is quite unique in the world. So we're very proud that that worked. The way we did that is we started a neutral facility. So as to say, if Philips had asked Samsung and Panasonic to dance, it would have been quite hard to get them involved directly in research. The way we've done that now is we've created a neutral facility called the Haas Center, which is a non-profit organization. And that actually has a driver to generate knowledge and to generate jobs for the Holland knowledge region. And that means that together we have combined research topics with our visionary talent, and we have been able to invite direct competing companies to work on innovation together, and that is, I think that's spectacular.
Okay, so we've talked about users, an excited user base. We've talked about having a demilitarized zone where this takes place. Rob, from somebody who's executing this on the ground, what is a success that you can talk about in bringing multiple partners together, and how did it get that way?
Well, I think from an innovator's point of view, you know, our success is measured in whether or not we can scale an idea and scale it so that it can make money and provide benefits to our partners. So it's a difficult chore to attract the interest from not only corporations, and it takes large corporations to scale to big volumes, but a relationship with communities is difficult. The larger the community, the more difficult or the more time it takes to get them to understand the message. So initially, our company has been focused on finding the communities that have control of their infrastructure, that can understand what we're attempting to do, you know, get excited about the message, and then become part of, you know, our company and growing it. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Jianxi, just, I mean, as a real expert and instructor in this, we've heard about, you know, an excited user community. We've heard about neutrality. We've heard about the need for scale. What are some of the other factors that you think have contributed to a success that you know about?
Sure. So since I'm based in a university, I'd like to share a story around the university with you. The story.
Can everyone hear him?
No?
Yeah. Jianxi, can you just move that up to a little closer to your? Yeah, there you go.
Better?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Sorry about it.
You're live.
So I learned this story when I was at MIT working on my PhD a few years back. So in 2002, an MIT professor in the mechanical engineering department invented a cutting-edge new 3D imaging technology. And that work was sponsored by a commercialization-oriented applied research grant from MIT Nijkamp-Diesfeldt Center for Technology Innovation, sponsored by Nijkamp-Diesfeldt, a successful Indian entrepreneur and other entrepreneurs together. Because of the commercialization orientation of the grant, he was thinking about commercialization opportunities. At the time, he thought about face recognition for security uses around 2002, right, after 9/11. But that changed afterwards, after he participated in a networking event at MIT, organized by MIT Business Plan Competition, student-run nonprofit organization event, where he met two Harvard Business School MBA students who eventually became his company co-founders. So those two Harvard Business School students and later business professionals took his idea, took his technology, developed business plans, and explored different kinds of application alternatives, and presented their different alternatives at different places, including MIT Business Plan Competition, including Cambridge Enterprise Forum, which is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a non-profit organization connecting entrepreneurs and investors. And they realized that in the process, they developed the prototype, and they discovered actually there's a huge need in dental imaging instead of security. So they decided to focus on that. They incorporated their company, they licensed technology through MIT Technology Licensing Office, another shareholder. And, and they received some seed capital from the participants of the Cambridge Enterprise Forum, followed by venture capital funding a year after in 2004. And after 2 years operating the company was acquired by 3M in 2006 for $93 million. So all was done in 3 years. Fantastic. I think this story amazed me because it illustrates how an ecosystem works to turn academic research knowledge into commercializable invention, and also take the invention from research into markets and make it become innovation. And that ecosystem included so many shareholders, different kinds of players I just illustrated. Harvard Business School students, MIT professor, Cambridge Enterprise Forum, Business Plan Competition, Student Organization, Technology Licensing Office, and Nijkamp-Diesfeldt Center for Technology Innovation. The interesting point is there's no central designer, there's no central controller. It's an ecosystem, and everybody works with other people, bodies, and co-evolve and benefit from the value co-created in the ecosystem. And I think what makes that ecosystem work very efficiently is the commonly shared belief about entrepreneurship, about innovation, about openness, right? And there's a culture in that ecosystem, and which facilitated the working together.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, that's pretty good. 3 years to 93 million. Okay. Katie, you know, one thinks of you working for a utility, and therefore you're a big company that owns all the rights of way anyway and can do whatever it wants. But I happen to know that the story is much more sophisticated than that in Chattanooga. So, can you talk about a success there and what you think were the lessons from it?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, we are a municipally owned electric utility, and part of our mission, well, our stated mission is to improve quality of life and to actually build an environment that's conducive to economic development. Chattanooga is really not any different from many smaller cities in the country. You know, we faced a lot of challenges. We faced a bad economy many years ago. And we realized that if we were going to pull ourselves out of this situation, we were going to have to look really within ourselves to do that. One of the things we thought was most important was to build an environment where people could come and have good jobs, have good paying jobs. And frankly, we were seeing those jobs leave Chattanooga. Two things that we realized companies look for is access to reliable electricity and to what we offer, or what we call is second generation broadband services. So that's really what led us to build this fiber optic network. And we have seen great success with that. You know, over the last couple of years, we've seen, we can point to about 4,800 new jobs in our community. Not 100% because of this network, but certainly we can point to this network as being part of the reason those companies chose to locate in Chattanooga. But the real story, I think, are the new entrepreneurs that are bringing the great fresh ideas to Chattanooga. Some of our challenges, as you would expect, would be being sued, overcoming those challenges, but that's all in the past now, and we're really on a great trajectory. I will say probably one of the most exciting things going on in Chattanooga is happening this summer. We're hosting the Gig Tank, if you want to think about the Shark Tank that you may have seen on TV. We're hosting teams of entrepreneurs, 8 teams of entrepreneurs, a parallel track of students that have moved to Chattanooga for the summer. They're competing for about $300,000 in prizes for the best idea. What do you do with the gig? So while we're seeing incremental new jobs hit every month in Chattanooga, we have more jobs in the more companies in the pipeline with our chamber right now than I think any other place in the country. But we're also seeing this great infusion of young talent where our folks, our kids used to leave town when they graduated from college. Now they're staying, now they're bringing new, fresh ideas. So I'd point to the new jobs, the new capital investment in the community, but most importantly, the new ideas that are springing from our young people.
And you're really talking about building an ecosystem that wasn't there before.
Absolutely.
Driven by this crazy thing called the gigabit network. All right, so thank you, all of you, for sharing different aspects. We've heard about user involvement, excitement. We've heard about a neutral location. We've heard about the need for scale. We can never forget that. The need to bring different skills and funding and talents into that ecosystem. Why are we going to do all this? Why open innovation? Why? What makes this open innovation approach so different and so necessary from just doing it yourself, just going into the garage and doing it yourself and not having to involve all those nasty people with different opinions? It's very annoying that people have different opinions. Why is it better if it is better? Jianxi, what?
Yeah, I think it's determined by the nature of innovation. Right? Innovation is not one shot. It's not like 2 ideas colliding and then making a new idea. Innovation is a long process. It's a process made of so many different distinct activities. You need knowledge at the beginning, right? Fundamental and then new knowledge. And you need to turn that knowledge into a new invention. That's the activity we call design process, which require a very specific kind of expertise and require a lot of resources. Then you further need to take the invention successfully through the commercialization process or entrepreneurship process to markets and make it diffuse then it becomes innovation. Then the commercialization process requires another set of expertise and resources. So the long process that comes from knowledge to innovation involves so many different kinds of activities, requires so many different kinds of skills, different kinds of resources. It's just very unlikely that a single company or a single person can have all the required resources and activities to make innovation happen from an idea, from knowledge. So involving many different partners, different kinds of players, and making ecosystem work together is essential for pursuing innovation.
So you just can't avoid it.
Yeah, so I think open innovation, open, the word in the phrase is redundant. Innovation has to be open.
Well.
Right?
She's going to disagree with you. Before you do, actually, let's go ahead. So you have a reservation there.
Well, the open innovation, I think, is now being used frequently by people who really are not in open innovation.
Okay.
Many organizations say that they do, but client-supplier relations are really not open innovation. On the other hand, open innovation is also not open source. It sounds much more threatening than it actually is, because the way I look at open innovation, you have very solid boundary conditions within which you start sharing knowledge and you start co-creating. And I agree that it's important to combine all of it, but there's.
Just a moment. So why are the boundaries important?
Because if you want to start co-creating, you have to first define what was owned by parties when and as they came in. So that's the background knowledge.
So it's my baseball, but it's your bat.
Yeah, exactly. And so you need to define what was there. You need to define what's being brought in. Improvements on the original owner's background needs to go back to the background owner. Otherwise, you can block their knowledge. That's important. The co-creation gets defined by the way it's being financed. So co-owners can also have licensing rights, sub-licensing rights. That needs to be the boundary conditions. But there's one thing that you said when you started the introduction, and that is trust is essential. The boundary conditions that you create start with trust. No CEO of Samsung is ever going to sign a contract to start in an open innovation program if there is no trust between the people discussing it. But also that means that if you look forward, the trust needs to be there that all the boundary conditions that you have created will be safeguarded. So it's still a very human factor in open innovation. So I agree, innovation is the open you can leave out. You would hope that that is true, but in essence, that is not the case. Yep.
Trust but verify, as a former president of the United States.
Yeah. Boy, was he right. Yeah.
Rob, your company is doing something remarkable in terms of putting intelligence into both new lighting and the retrofitting of lighting. And you are going about it in the most, well, I'll use the word circuitous. You've got more people at the table, and you put more energy into getting all those people at the table. And when you first described it to me, I just sort of shook my head and I thought, boy, that seems like a long way around, but why isn't it? Why is it necessary?
Well, it is a long way around. It's 13 years a long way around.
Yeah,
so.
It's not 3 years.
So, you know, it's a risk-reward kind of system, right? That's the way I think we all live. So you have to be willing to put some level of risk out there to reap a great reward. So in my company's perspective, and to go back to your comments, great ideas do start in the garage. I've started in the garage many times. And so, but to take it from the garage to a real successful product takes partnerships. It takes openness. So I talked earlier about scale, and that involves so many different facets of it. So you have to get, first off, investors excited in your message. If you get the investors excited, you get money. So it takes a lot of money to execute on a grand vision, and I'm no exception to that. It's taken a lot of money. So the next step is to get relationships going with companies that can take the vision and help you grow it. So today, at least in the technology sector, it takes partnerships with major corporations. So we have spent the last 3 years flying the globe, establishing relationships with partnerships in China, in Japan, in the US, in Canada, and it's all part of the system. So at the end of the day, if we're successful with making these investments, we've got a lot of excitement. We've got, hopefully, an understood business model that can make money, and that's part of making it successful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Katie, no, don't forget your question, Belle. That's a bad idea. Not when you're the moderator. What partners have been involved for EPB in putting that network out? Because it's not obvious on the outside when you look at it. You just say, well, you just did what you're supposed to be doing, but there's pretty intensive partnerships in Chattanooga that have made that happen.
We're very fortunate. We've had great elected leadership over actually the last couple of decades who began to work with us 15 years ago on a vision for the city that included maybe not how it turned out, not the gigabit network, because who knew that would be a possibility, but at least a vision to put Chattanooga out as a technological center. We have a great relationship with the city, even though we're owned by the city. There is a very hands-off type of relationship, but we have good relationship with our elected officials. We're also very fortunate. We have great participation by several foundations in Chattanooga. In 1901, several businessmen got together and bought the rights to bottle Coca-Cola exclusively for North America.
I'm sorry, I gotta tell you, it's a better story than that. A bunch of Chattanooga businessmen went to the Coca-Cola company in Atlanta and said, look, we got this great idea. You could put this stuff in bottles. Because right then it was being sold through what we call soda. We used to be called soda fountains in the United States. You can put this stuff in bottles and sell it. And the Coca-Cola company said, that's ridiculous.
That's
They
right.
said, no, really, you can do it. They said, fine. And they sold them the rights for $1 US.
That's right.
And
The
that's why
exclusive
it's
right
Coca-Cola.
to bottle Coca-Cola. And those gentlemen lived in Chattanooga. And they also felt a great responsibility to the community, and they set up some wonderful foundations. So again, I think it goes back to probably some of our lower points in the 1970s. We were called the most polluted, the dirtiest little city in America. We were dependent on a foundry economy. All that was going by the wayside. Foundations, elected officials, again with the Electric Power Board, all put our heads together and tried to figure out a way to pull the city up by its bootstraps.
We've heard about boundary issues. Margot talked about boundary issues. What are the boundaries? I mean, you guys are, you're utility, and so you've got a set of issues. The city has its issues. The foundations have theirs. You've got University of Tennessee. You've got. I mean, what are some of the boundaries you've had to define in your project?
The boundaries are of course, we're faced with a legal boundary as an electric utility that we can't go outside of our service territory. There are certainly boundaries in that we can't use electric funds to do certain things and that sort of thing. But that really has not presented any sort of issue. There is such a collaborative spirit in Chattanooga, and has been for 100 years, that the boundaries are merely legal. We certainly adhere to those boundaries and we respect them. But as far as causing us operational difficulties, there have really been none.
Mr. Carter, okay, so open innovation, you are one of the most collaborative people I know in terms of your efforts to push Manchester out into multiple European organizations to drive forward the state of the art. Why is that necessary?
I think it's because you have to demonstrate that something's possible. I mean, we have had an interesting discussion about this amongst European cities, because some of us come from a background of kind of urban planning and economic development, and you have plans for the city. People want to know that that bridge is going to be repaired and that new road's going to be connected to that new housing estate. But when we come to the idea of a smart city or a digital city, there's no digital master planning. I mean, there's no thinking about what are the critical infrastructures of the future, and we've got to change that. I'll give you a very good example. We had a digital skills summit in the city. We had about 200 mainly sort of small businesses, And on the second day, we had more than 1,000 students come along because they didn't believe there were all these little companies who could hire them. But one of the questions that came up, it was interesting, somebody mentioned 3D printing today. In 10 years' time, it's quite likely that most businesses and many private homes will have 3D printers. So 10 years' time. So who's planning the changes in our school curriculum or in our university courses to prepare a workforce that in 10 years' time are going to be product ready? And the answer, no one is. So, you know, probably we're missing a trick or three. So therefore, things like the test bed, you know, you build a gigabit network, actually in some ways, not because there's proven demand, but because it's a disruptive technology. And in its right way, if there's a bit of planning around a disruptive technology, it can disrupt in a very positive way. You have to be a little bit careful with that. So you build a gigabit network because there's no demand, and then you have a geek hunt, and then you have your gig tank. I mean, you know, we're already stealing loads of ideas from Chattanooga. It's fantastic.
That's part of innovation too.
Very open innovation.
So the leapfrog idea of innovation, you make creative spaces where these people can go. You create experimental networks. You have test beds. And that means that as businesses or people in universities come up with ideas, there's a reality check but test environment where they can go and demonstrate it, and that can convince other people that it's worth investing in or bringing their products. So things like the Living Labs network, it's not important that there's just a concept of Living Labs, there's an important that there's a concept of Living Labs collaboration and networking and meeting each other at events like that. That to me is the crucial thing, and we've got to start linking our future thinking to our planning of the physical environment. I'm speaking as a city manager, not as an entrepreneur, but we should have as much effort going into this space as we are in thinking where our buses and trains are going to go.
How do you, though, as a person who is paid a salary by a city, how are you able to justify to your council, for instance, this creation of this open creative space? And Rob, how do you justify to your shareholders the amount of time you are screwing around, you know, doing something that you think is absolutely essential to the mission? And I know the Holst Center does it by defining some very specific parameters, and so everybody knows what they're going in to get. But so could some of you just talk about that issue?
Well, from a city point of view, I would be a bit crass and say it is payment by results. I'm sure when in 1993 we said we were going to go to Europe to set up a network called Telecities, the mayor probably thought we were using taxpayers' money to go to a Star Trek convention, but he kind of stuck with us. And what's happened is, you know, we cost as a team less than £1 million a year to run, and we bring in on average about £10 million of investment to the city, particularly from European sources, and that has hopefully a kind of multiplier effect. So, but it does come back to a point. We've been very lucky in Manchester. We've had incredibly stable political leadership for more than 20 years, and boy does that help. When I look at other cities where they're kind of changing their mayor every 3 or 4 years and no one's certain. So it's a bit of luck, but it's also a bit of planning. You know, we have got to bring, you know, for all the criticism of the public sector for wasting taxpayers' money, actually we're not too bad at the concept of planning. But we still do it in almost a kind of 19th century way, not even a 20th century way. And if we can combine the skills that we do have with partnership, because now it's got to involve all the other partners, and bring it into the 21st century, then we could be really thinking forward about what we want our cities to look like in 20, 30, 40 years, as well as the next 2 or 3 years.
I'm always amazed at people who complain about government waste. I look at them and say, have you ever worked for a major corporation?
I couldn't possibly comment.
I would add that in our case in Chattanooga, we really built the fiber optic network as a smart grid. There are several independent studies that estimate the cost to a community of power outages the size of Chattanooga is about $100 million a year. And that's loss in productivity, lost wages, all sorts of things. So we started out by saying we're going to design this network, and our goal will be to reduce the duration of these power outages by 40%. And that's roughly worth, you know, $40 million to the community. Unfortunately, we've had opportunities to test that over the last year. We were hit one day in April by 9 tornadoes. We had 2 other tornadoes 2 other times, and we actually found that 40% reduction in this duration is very conservative. We're actually seeing better than that. People steal power. Yes, believe it or not, they steal electric power to the tune of about $10 million in our system is what we estimate. Now we're able to detect that power theft immediately and can stop it. So we're able to pay for the system just by benefits of the smart grid alone. And then you layer on top of that sale of these services, and the system really is paid for twice. So for us, it was not as a risky proposition as it might seem.
Rob, I asked you about your
Sure.
shareholders. Yeah.
So we've invested a lot of time reaching out into communities that had the infrastructure. You know, specifically, we rolled out for the first time up in Stratford, up in Canada, as a proving ground, as a test case to show that what we're offering is real. You can go and see it. You can see what it does. You know, just to give you a quick snapshot, you know, our company is automating lighting, even street lighting. So a small community that spends $500,000 a year on street lighting, with our technology, we can reduce that down to $50,000 a year. So the question is, okay, how do these communities pay for it? Well, obviously, we had to go and create partnerships with large financing corporations that would invest in cities to do it. So now we can go to the cities and communities, establish this relationship, show that we've proved it, it's real, and create a way that they can do it with a $0 investment. So it's a win-win. A win for the community, a win for the corporation, definitely a win for the shareholders.
So we're achieving a lot of victories that are just absolutely obvious, which is what pays for the creative space in a way. And by the way, I was there for the test in Stratford, and I watched this. Rob turns on the street light in this particular case, and he said, we're getting the same illumination we got last time. Here's the meter reading, and look at the power drain. It's 5% of what was there before. And I said, you've just got to be kidding me. But okay.
Amazing.
So does that, Jianxi, does that hold true with some of the experiences you have? The sense that we have to make sure that the business model, if you will, is overperforming, so that we can justify the creative work that needs to go on, which is not necessarily always understood by people who are busy counting beans.
Yeah, I think one of the major challenges is that different kinds of people, different kinds of organizations doing very different kinds of things in the community. You want to aggregate them together, but they are organized in different ways. They have different languages. So it might be very hard for them to communicate very well and make the boundaries permeable and work together. So I think, based on the stories you told, I think it's important for the potential community builders to build up certain common culture or common language or common belief, which can facilitate the communication across the boundaries of different kinds of organizations, including government organizations, including companies, and the research organizations. Right, so everybody can keep doing what they used to do with high efficiency, high specialization, but at the same time also interact and work together frequently and also effectively at low cost. Right? So,
and the language, if I can add, sometimes people say the same thing but mean something very different.
Exactly.
If you talk to talent in research about we're in this for longer term, they go, yeah, it's about 7 to 10 years, university, academia, sphere. The industry by longer term means usually 3 to 5 years. If you talk to an SME, it's 12 to 18 months. And so they're all saying the same thing, but the expectations behind what they're saying are completely different. So even though they may speak the same language, test if they're saying the same thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about failure. It is supposedly true that you learn more from your mistakes than from your successes. I would like each of you to sort of, if you would, talk about something that didn't work, something that you tried, something or that you've seen tried, and that produced a really good lesson about the right way to do things, whether it's from a project at the Holst Center or one of your many companies, Rob, or something else. Just Give me a story of something that produced really interesting learning for you from this effort to make something new. Because the one thing we know about innovation is you're going to fail more often than you succeed. And I think one of the things that communities have trouble with psychologically is really accepting that we're going to put a little bit of taxpayer money, we're going to put a lot of goodwill into this thing, and it's going to blow up every once in a while, and nobody likes that, but it's the way it works. And if you're going to be an effective innovator, you're going to accept that and keep moving through it. So what can we learn from tell us a story of failure and what we can learn from it.
Shall I start?
Please.
I think the one thing that we saw when we started Holst Center, our vision was to create a physical location where we would bring everybody together in order to have them interact, start trusting each other, and come to the 1 and 1 is 3. We then went on to create a virtual network where we would say, you know, we have satellites across the world of organizations that we work with, and what we didn't do is we didn't bring those people together often enough. So although we had this expectation that it would by magic appear on a virtual network, what we saw is that really did not work. You will see that international research talent, and it doesn't matter from what culture these people are, will not share their knowledge if they don't look each other in the eye often enough and understand that the recipient of their knowledge is going to do the right thing with it. And that goes for academia, industry, SMEs, Holst Center team members. That is the most essential thing, the trust between people to give out their knowledge, but more importantly, to accept that someone else has a bright idea that they can then absorb. You know, in open innovation, you can't have the not invented here syndrome. It just does not work. So if one thing we learned is we were right in first instance to start a physical location, not just a virtual network, and that is bring people together, have them talk at the coffee machine, and then go back to their research, and that's what works.
Who else? We got one.
Well, I think I can add directly to that. You know, I think certainly my failures are almost always a failure to communicate. So if I cannot tell my story, and I've told my story in a lot of different ways, so I find that email is not very effective, even a telephone conversation is not very effective, but flying across the planet or to meet someone face to face to make sure that even if we're talking the same language, you know, we're communicating. I can tell you my story. You can ask me direct questions. You can read my expressions. You know, are we communicating?
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important, at least from my point of view, is, you know, the communications.
Yeah.
Interesting. Dave?
I've got one from open data work we were doing. We thought open data, we'll organise a little competition, put somebody to come up with an app, bus timetables, really innocuous information. Except that in Britain, outside of London, all the bus companies are private. So we wanted to develop an app where you could see the time of the bus and it would tell you how much your fare would be. And the bus company said, no, that's commercial in confidence information. So we said, so when you go and pay your fare, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement with the driver then. And they said, no, well, you know, our drivers would be upset. So luckily we had a meeting with the trade union that represented the bus drivers. And we explained it to them, and we said people might actually have the right money, and that would save you hassle. So they then had to go to the management and say, you know, from a trade union point, we think this open data thing's a great thing, and we finally got our app. But what it taught us is, even though you think something is a really simple thing to do, you have to have all sorts of feedback loops built in, so that if it doesn't work, you don't just say, oh my God, we can't do it. You actually really learn from that immediately, and you try a different way or a different approach, or you involve different partners. In this case, you know, the bus. You know, who would have thought we were talking to the bus drivers' trade union about an open data project? It's bizarre, but I think that's the importance of the test bed approach. That you've got to trial and test, and you have prototypes, And then if something doesn't work, don't be afraid to try it a different way.
And the network you're talking about, the testing you're talking about, is people.
Yeah,
It's people.
absolutely.
I would just say probably our lesson learned was don't be afraid to go big.
That's interesting.
We entered into the market, at least from a broadband services market. At the time, the incumbents were offering 5 megs, and we said, okay, we'll blow them away. We'll go 15 megs up and down. Well, immediately they went to 15 megs. And we found ourselves in this war of words, trying to explain why ours was better than theirs. And so we finally just said, oh, forget it. And we just...
Just turn it all the way up.
We did. We doubled everybody's speed one night and didn't tell anybody. And tested everything, kind of measured usage, and then we said, oh, by the way, your price is the same, but we doubled everybody's speed. And so that quieted everybody down for a little bit, and we were kind of bolstered by that and said, well, what the heck, we'll do a gig. So that's what led to that. While I don't really think it impacted our take rate in the beginning, I think the perception, we wanted to be a technology leader. We wanted to make Chattanooga a technology leader. And I think we gated ourselves a little bit by jumping out a little tentatively. If we had it to do over again, we'd just squash them from the very beginning.
Well, I know my cable company did that to me. One day I just get a call from them saying, just wanted you to let you know we've doubled your speed. I said, thank you. I'm still a customer. Jianxi.
I think I have a very different story to tell. I wouldn't call it a failure. I think it's ongoing efforts.
It's very academic.
An ongoing effort is very academic? Okay.
Yeah, any success has to come through failures, right?
Of course, of course.
So eventually you're going to succeed.
Failure is also a result, yeah.
Yeah, so this story is at our school here in NYU Poly. One of our faculty members invented a fantastic new way of producing biofuels based on his award-winning academic research. And he's not a traditional academic person. He created a company and he worked with business professionals to commercialize his technology, his discoveries. And our university actually holds 50% stake in this company. And being in business, and this company is in the incubator of NYU Poly. Okay, so it's an ecosystem, right? Good. Yeah. So this business has been there for like less than 4 years, about 4 years. Yeah, it's going okay, but it hasn't been to the level phenomenally successful. So in a conversation, I asked the faculty entrepreneur, what do you think are the major challenges of your business preventing you from being phenomenally successful? And he said, it is actually the fact that we are in New York and we're in this biochemical business for which New York ecosystem doesn't offer the most important and necessary human, social, financial resources and factors. And right, so that's not surprising for many of us who want to build a local community, local innovation ecosystem. We often face local regional constraints, right? So that's frustrating, and you may want to give it up, doing something else locally based on your local advantages, or you move to Silicon Valley or other more complete ecosystem. Then ask this faculty member, so what are you going to do for the next stage, facing these challenges? And he said, I want to be here in New York because I'm a professor. This is my main job, but I want to see the commercial value of my research. So I want to keep doing this. What I want to do is to figure out potential partners, suppliers, customers in other regions, in this country, other parts of the world. I want to create new linkages and maintain such linkages with other places which can offer the kind of resources I want to build a viable and larger business and grow my business. So I think that's fantastic. I think it's pointed right on, and I'm really amazed by his strategy. I think the point here is the increasing importance of searching on a global scale, or going out of your traditional region, right? When your local community faces certain local constraints, you should build linkages going out to other communities in the world. So in that sense, I think open innovation, whether we should be open is not a question. The real question is how open you want to be and how open you can be. And my suggestion is, considering this globalized world, I think we definitely should search opportunities and resources on a global scale from the very beginning of any business.
Sure.
It's very interesting. Wow, okay. So place matters, but it doesn't also matter. It's also not necessarily a constraint. I love that. That brings us to the end of the hour that we've selected for this, so I hope you will join me in thanking our panelists for a fascinating discussion.